Reticula is the work that I have created in 2019, and it's from the Latin word reticulum, which means a network, and it explores the intersection of three different networks that are created by mushrooms, by living organisms. In this case, these are mushrooms, by humans, and by algorithms in the time and scale. So we have three different bodies of work within this one large installation. The first one is reticulum LIMINA, and it navigates us through a time lapse that is created by the software algorithm of image processing. What I did, I took an image of the mushroom mycelium network as a whole, and then I transformed it into, put it into Illustrator file. And in the Illustrator file, there is a function when you do the trace image, you can change the threshold. And the threshold is going to show you how many lines are appearing. You can go from like 3 up to 200 something, 36.
So you took the image of the fungal network
and I traced it.
And you put it in Adobe Illustrator, and you had the software trace the image.
Yes.
And based on some settings in that tracing the tracing feature in Adobe Illustrator, you were able to get the program to see different parts of the network.
Yes, so that's what I did exactly. So what happened actually, I was changing threshold every 9 points, like for example from 17 plus 9. So and every time it will generate a new, like it will conceal some of the, some of the past, and then will reveal some of the past, but it's not like it was growing the way that mycelium will grow when you just grow and things get grown one after another. It was just like a strange formation. Things will disappear and reappear again in different ways and forms.
So you're seeing an image how the machine sees the image.
Yes, but exactly that's what's happening. And so what was interesting to me is the fact that it's not a continuous image that was, like every 9, it doesn't really matter every 9 points. I just referenced to 9 points, to 9 days, how mycelium grows to become fully visible and expands through the whole petri dish, right? But it was interesting that it wasn't a growth in the sense how we used to see it, like a continuous growth. It was just things appear, reappear, disappear, and it's like the way machine could see the growth, which was not a continuous pattern. It was just like sort of plots of data being distributed in a random for us, but it's obviously an algorithmic for machine. So in the end, I laser etched 9 of these images, which corresponded with 9 days, and so then I assembled them in one line so it looks like a time lapse, which is, I consider it was a time lapse the way the machine was generating, because towards the end the machine will generate a full scale image of reticulum mycelium. That's the print with all the information in there. But to me, the way I felt, almost like if the machine could think in that way, even it's almost like a machine thinks like this algorithm is 2-dimensional. It cannot understand what 3 dimensions are, but yet almost it was like trying to understand it by deleting and applying these networks that just appear, reappear. And basically the final piece is the actual interactive installation where the viewer, the audience is encouraged to actively participate with the mycelium growth and growth of the networks. So it's the piece in the middle, in the corner that has 4 petri dishes on it. The middle petri dish is anchored and it's not movable. The other 3 are movable, and the audience is encouraged to come and put their ear to the petri dish, and they will hear the humming noise, which is a 220 hertz sine wave that I did a research upon, and it's been postulated that this specific frequency is very beneficial to help it to grow organisms. The petri dishes contain laser-etched maps of collecting sites of the specific fungi that is growing inside the petri dishes, and it's the oyster mushroom. And so the idea is that by trying to find the optimal hum, the optimal noise, of course, each one of us has our own perception of what's optimal. The audience is manipulating the growth. The idea of the sound came to me because I was trying to find a language, like a common ground, how I can communicate with living matter, right? Everything is, the actual language of the universe is the vibration. So I thought that through sound, and of course I cannot create yet a language to understand how to communicate with mycelium, because I don't know that language yet and nobody has decoded it in the form of sound. But I thought that since the study suggested that 220 sine wave will be able to stimulate and help the mycelium to grow, that could be like my signals I'll be sending to mycelium. Since I was collecting mushrooms for sampling, I decided to make some spore prints, and that's when it blew up into this giant spore print, continuous 23-foot roll, and then I created some smaller spore prints. But what actually happened, I spent a lot of time in the fall circling around UB and in Letchworth Forest nearby, which has a lot of decay matter. And I was collecting mushrooms, and then I created my own networks. Nature's printmaking medium is a spore print, right? Like in this case, it's fungus. So I thought it was, it was just like brilliant how you just drop this, how the mushrooms drop the spores, and I can just fix them with a hairspray. And kind of like, and every time it's a unique print. It's one of the kind. It's never going to be replicated, because each time it depends on humidity, how much spores are left, how much spores are produced. And it's almost like nature doesn't make things the same every single time. There's always a little bit of
variation.
Exactly, there's a little bit of variation. Like nothing is, not even one thing is the same, King oyster mushrooms at Whole Foods, like 2 years ago when I just arrived to Buffalo, to obviously cook and eat it. And then I was like, why not propagate it in my studio? I was able to create my stock of King oyster mushrooms. And they are known as vigorous like all the oyster families, they are known like be vigorous decomposers. So I set up this kind of incubator in this enclosed glass, almost like a message in a bottle, with a Kurt Vonnegut's book, Piano Player. And seeded it with my oyster mycelium. Unfortunately, I have to rip the book, like the middle of the book, so I can fit it into the glass container. And I seed it with mycelium only, so there is no anything else, it's just the book. So mycelium has been digesting that book for 2 years. Actually more than, I'm sorry, it's about 1.5 years now. And it's like my humorous way of thinking about information digestion, right? So like the mycelium is actually literally digesting the book. So while I was reading the book, I was like digesting it too, but through a different type of process. So that's why I call it M Digest, and that's a volume. It's the first volume, and what I can, well, again, so it started producing a very weird fruiting body in the form of the brain. It looks like a brain. So I have no idea, like I've never seen anything like this before. It gave me an opportunity, this mushroom collection, to actually be in those woods almost every couple of days, and to see the transformation of the forest from the late summer into like first frost, whenever the leaves were dropped and the forest were falling asleep. So what I did, besides the spore prints, I collected some of the artist conch mushroom that is growing on some of the decaying trees, and I made a mushroom paper out of it, and which again a reference to sustainable art practices. And then I laser etched my trail maps, my GPS trail maps that I created in those woods. So that was my connection. I'm very proud of this piece out of anyone, because it's so simple, and I think it's very elegant, and it's really kind of embeds like this whole, the way I felt in those woods, you know.
And so you're basically creating a connection to your physical location in the forest by using a machine readable language, which is GPS.
Yes, and also the fact that I use again the same, you know, software to generate, not to generate, but to trace images. So my GPS maps were like drawings. So that's why the laser-etched deconstructed book, they look like drawings. They almost look like black ink drawings, but they just laser-etched. And I wanted to have that effect as being, I made my own drawings in the forest among everybody else who was there and everything else who is there. There is like drawings on the ground. There's drawings made by spores. There's drawing made by seeds, you know. My way of changing people's mind is through creating a possibility of communication. So not an actual communication yet, but hopefully yes in the future, but a possibility of communication that will help us to see different organisms and different systems of intelligence in nature as not being lower, you know, in some way for us, but being on the same level.